afternoon. This is your new Pan-African show called Afreeqa with your host, Seifu. Today, we come to you on a very special day. Today is going to mark the 59th year of the establishment of the OAU. So we would like to say Happy Africa Day to everybody that's celebrating it, and hopefully it's the whole of Africa. We have a great guest for you. We would like her to introduce herself, please.
That's a very hard task to do. Thank you very much, Kazala. And thank you very much for having me on your show first. My name is Meron Amha. I would call myself, I guess, an entrepreneur. By trade, I'm a communication expert and a conference interpreter. And I'm also a cultural activist. I've worked within the cultural sector for a long time as well.
Beautiful. So we have a lot to talk about today.
Yes, we do.
So for those that don't know Meron, Amha. I mean, you've touched a little bit on who you are, but what you do would also help to tell our audience.
What we do, I mean, isn't what we do differ from period to period?
Yes, it does, unfortunately, or fortunately.
So I was born in Addis, and I grew up in Addis, even though my formative years have been in New York City. I went to the Lycée Gabra Mariam school here in high school here in Ethiopia, and then I migrated to the United States, mainly New York City. Where I did my education. I'm also a veteran of the United States Air Force. And then after that, my life kind of like ventured in different sectors. Mostly after the military, it was mostly within the cultural artistic sector in New York City, where I worked as assistant manager for programming for many of the biggest music venues and cultural venues in New York City, such as SOBs, B.B. King, places like Prospect Park, New York City Parks, like the concert series. Worked in the NGO sector as well in development before relocating in 2009 to Ethiopia, back again to the continent.
So you currently live only in Ethiopia?
No, actually, quite funny as you mentioned it. I currently live by splitting my time between 3 countries, 2 of them in the continent. Of course, my home base, my center, which is Addis. Ghana, Accra, my new home of the past 4 years now, and then New York City as well. So yeah, I split my time between those 3.
So you have listed as one of your many skills as an entrepreneur. How did you get to be an entrepreneur? And is it an easy path for women? Can you provide some advice to aspiring young women entrepreneurs in Africa?
My path to entrepreneurship. Well, my path to entrepreneurship has not been one of a direct straight line. I do come from a line of successive entrepreneurial women in my family. My grandmother on my mom's side is actually the founder of one of the first modern restaurants in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, called Dashen. And then my mother as well, successful, businesswoman of small restaurants, milk places. So entrepreneurship has always been in my bloodline. I've always seen the women in my family partaking in that, supporting their families, and actually even future generations, not just their children, but their future generations. So I've always known since I was a kid that, that was available. It was not a world that was invisible to me. So it was always attainable. It was not impossible. But, life takes its own course, and then, we become, migrants, and we go elsewhere. We have to adjust, work, school, life. But I've always, for me, when I left Ethiopia, I'm from a generation of those people that didn't leave as a refugee in an extreme violent situation. I left for better opportunities. So there was never a doubt in my mind that I was going to return home to my continent. It was just a matter of time, So of course your studies, and then after that it's always like, oh, I don't want to go empty-handed. You want to have build savings and kind of like a roadmap. So finally, that came together somewhat quasi-way in 2009 when I decided to come back. So when I came back, I didn't go directly into business, but of course, I have to make money, I have to adjust. So then that's when I went into conference interpretation. I took trainings and certifications back in New York. So I became a conference interpreter working with different agencies here in Ethiopia, such as the African Union, the UNECA here. I mean, we're kind of lucky in a sense here in Addis. I don't know if you know, but Addis is actually the third diplomatic city in the world, next to New York, Geneva, and Addis is the third one. So there's lots of meetings. So the conferencing sector is one of basically a booming sector in Ethiopia. So then I went into doing that and doing some work as a contractor in communications, campaigns, and others. So that's how my life to entrepreneurship started here. Then, of course, as that grows and you start making inroads within the different sectors, I also dabbled within the art sector by managing a couple of bands, working with the likes of, Henok Temesgen, Abega Shiota, and all others, and building the industry, the art and culture industry in Ethiopia. And then I founded my company, Be Collective. At first, it was an entertainment consulting company. I based it in New York City in the beginning. So my path to entrepreneurship started as such. In regards, and then of course, as life continued, it went into different tracks. But what do I recommend to young women? I think first and foremost is knowing that it's possible. I mean, for me, that's what, regardless of the challenges, what makes me stay, what made me start, and what makes me kind of persevere in a challenging environment is knowing and seeing women that have done it before me. Right. Then when it gets hard, I can say, you know what, look, there are those that have done it regardless of a situation, and it is possible. So I think it's very important for people like you, programs like yours, to be able to showcase women that have, done it, that are going through it, that have gone through it and succeeded, so that way, young women can know that it is possible. I think that's very important.
That's very true. What does Be Collective do?
First, when I first began Be Collective in 2015, I believe, it was solely working within the cultural entertainment sector, and conferencing. So we were doing a lot of event management, production, translation, interpretation within that sector. And then slowly, after having lived in a different capacity, so I was senior liaison for the United Nations Mine Action and peacekeeping missions in Sudan, in both of the Sudans. And when I was working within that capacity and started going to different African countries, and then started to see the need for African products. I'm an Ethiopian, and when I was going to different countries, and I'm a coffee addict, I have migraines if I don't drink coffee, probably 4 or 5 a day. So when I have a hard time trying to find a cup of coffee, that is not Nescafe, that is not instant coffee, because instant coffee just gives me heart palpitations. There's a problem, because I'm in Africa. I come from a country, where coffee originates. We are the #1 producer of coffee, third or fourth in the world, first in Africa. How is it that other African countries cannot even carry coffee? So these questions started percolating in my head. And then that's when basically the idea of how come it is not possible for me to take Ethiopian coffee to Ghana, for example, or to Sudan, or to anywhere else in Africa. So that individual need in the beginning, that then translated into a collective need, because then I started asking around my environment, and everybody was like, yes, I love Ethiopian coffee. Yes, I like Ghanaian chocolate. But we can't find it. So just to solve that issue is how I entered into basically the coffee and then subsequent cocoa industry. So that's currently right now what B Collective is doing is we have satellite offices here in Addis, we have our offices in Ghana as well as in New York. So we produce Ethiopian specialty coffee from Ethiopia for export into the world, mainly of course in West Africa as well. And then we produce Ghanaian 100% bean to bar chocolate in Ghana for export into the world and mainly East Africa as well.
And how has it been going?
Interesting.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Since I know we're going to cover it at some point.
Yes, we will.
What are the major challenges you face in your industry?
Well, I think there's many challenges in the cultural sector, in the artistic sector. In Africa in general, there are challenges. As a person living in a couple of countries, first of all, free movement of people, as a person of African descent, it's not easy as an African to move around African countries in regards to like visas, in regards to transportation. The cost of it, is tremendous. I pay less to go to New York than I do to go to Ghana. This is my everyday reality.
So today marks the 59th year since the OAU, now AU, was established. Do you think we have accomplished what our founding Pan-African fathers had envisioned for Africa?
I think we have, and we haven't. I think that every generation, it's not a one thing that we can say like, that's it, we've accomplished it, it's done. Dusted. I think it's an eternal vision, goal for Africa, for Africans, for human beings. It's not, there's an objective, we know there's a track we're supposed to go, but I don't think it is this, like I said, this one thing we have to accomplish. So as such, I would say that there are certain things that have been accomplished in terms of laying the foundation. Our ancestors did that, and every generation, I think, is trying to add to that foundation. And then our responsibility, and I would say we haven't because of the many wars and conflicts that have taken us also backwards, and corruption and all the other things that also make me want to say that no, maybe I think we're backtracking a little bit from some of the visions that our ancestors like Kwame Nkrumah, Haile Selassie, and all others had put in place when we see these individual countries, actually, not just even the continent, even on the individual countries of where we are. Sometimes it's difficult to see.
What do you think the role of youth is in African development?
Huge, immense. The youth is our future.
Pretty much.
I think we're pretty much almost done. I mean, not age-wise, but in terms of some of the things that we're doing, and the youth is the one that's going to be implementing some of our visions, some of the objectives that were put in place. So the role, and then looking at the demographics of Africa. I mean, we're talking about 1.3 billion people, out of which more than 70% are, youth under the age of 30. So now, of course, if we're talking about Africa growing, then we're talking about that more than 70% of the 1.3 billion that has a responsibility. So it is huge.
Okay, what is AFCFTA?
AFCFTA. AFCFTA is the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA. It's an acronym. And it is basically in March 21st, 2018, about 47 countries came together in Kigali in Rwanda to basically sign and adopt an agreement, which was basically the basis of what the AFCTA, the Kigali agreement is basically the basis of what the AFCTA is. And then it came into, formally into action in 2019. When these member countries, basically ratified the agreement, basically binding them into this agreement. So the AFCTA is believed to lead to the structural transformation of Africa. It's supposed to provide a framework and tool for boosting intra-Africa trade. And it's basically to create a single market for goods and services in Africa to deepen the economic, basically, unity of Africa.
Now, while I was researching on AFCFTA, sometimes it's like, should I say it or should I? It's like
AFCTA. I actually skipped the C in there, and they put it in small letters. So I'm like, maybe I'm not supposed to say it.
No, it's like, and in some places I haven't even written it. So while researching on AFCFTA, and I came across an article by the UN in which you were featured.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Our company was one, and I, as a female, women, I don't like the word female actually, women. Women entrepreneur. So they were looking around, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and women entrepreneurship, and of course the AFCTA is prime of a bigger agenda, not just for Africa, for the world. I mean, Africa is one of the hugest continent, and actually if the AFCTA, when the AFCTA is successful, it's supposed to be creating one of the world's largest, basically, free trade area. In terms of area space, actually this one will be bigger compared to the ones like the EU and all others. So it is at the focus of many institutions like the UN. So I guess when they were doing research, they were starting to see women that were working within that field, within that domain. And yes, we were selected in 2021 because the launch of AFCTA, even though it was ratified in 2019, it was not supposed to be in effect. The implementation was not supposed to start until 2021. So basically, since January 1st, 2021 was when basically the AFCTA was launched to see the beginning phases. So the UN came in to kind of like see where we were at as private sector businesses, small businesses, women-owned businesses working in this field. They wanted to see what we were doing, what our challenges were, to kind of, I guess, shed light on the situation.
So did they?
They did. I mean, the UN is a big organization, obviously, that kind of serves as kind of a central point of many of NGOs and development sector, corporations as well as institutions. So as such, they do have a huge platform. So we were very lucky and grateful that we were selected to be showcased in their newspapers.
So what is the purpose and benefit of the AFCFTA?
The AFCTA is just, well, first of all, it's an institution. So I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but right now, as you know, the AU, the old OAU, the recent AU, the African Union, is headquartered here in Addis Ababa. However, when it came to this economical integration, which really requires, as we know, a whole staff, institution, theoretical research about it, they decided to build its own department, which is now actually headquartered in Accra, Ghana. So the permission was given to remove that institution and then move it solely on its own to Accra, Ghana. So which makes actually for me very good, because I live in the two headquarters where the AU is. So it's not leaving me alone. But so what is it meant to do? I believe, quoting from their own narrative, it's supposed to provide the tool and infrastructure to provide the economical, obviously, deepening of Africa by providing the tools to remove tariff and non-tariff barriers that are stopping us from trading among each other, from moving around as individuals freely within the continent. And when I say trade, it's not just a trade of goods, but also trade of services. And when we say services, it touches upon some of the works that we also do in regards to art development, culture. There's tangible and intangible, heritages, tourism. And other services. So these are how do we How do we trade? How do we work together? And at the end, I think what we can say is just in one sentence, to make it simpler in layman terms, is to basically create a single market for these goods within the intra-Africa domain.
Now, you are actually one entity that has started doing this.
Yes.
Okay.
Be collectives.
Exactly. So Be Collective takes coffee from Ethiopia.
Yes.
And then brings in chocolate from Ghana.
Yes. So first thing is first. I mean, we have to observe. I mean, why coffee and cocoa? First of all, so for me, one, I love both.
It's a personal.
It's a very personal. I mean, I do believe that you have to be personal with your. I mean, with what you do.
Absolutely.
You know what you do.
Absolutely.
I mean, that has what has worked for me. I don't know about others. So coffee and cocoa. First of all, I mean, what has been Africa's issue in terms of we are right now in the phase of industrialization. So, you know, Africa is known for very much extractive industries. You know, we're known for having the most resources, but we're also known to have to export so much of our raw resources to then import, you know, value-added goods, you know, which basically makes us not even the beneficiary of 1/3 or even 1/5 of what the entire GDP of some of our products can bring in terms of GDP. I mean, the coffee is a $1 trillion industry. I mean, coffee and cocoa sell more than oil in this world. I mean, coffee is one of the most largely traded commodity in this world. Coffee, our coffee, you know, our coffee that was discovered, you know, in our country. But we don't even make, you know, a fraction of what we could be making. So of course, Africa, first of all, when we say industrialization, we have to move from this concept of, you know, selling just our raw to then depend on imported value-added goods. So my first instinct was to, of course, be able to have the capital and resources to go towards value addition. And I have amazing partners here in Ethiopia that have worked years in this. You know, I don't want to pass by, you know, without mentioning Ya Coffee Roasters, you know, an institution, a company, a private sector company that actually works with me in creating one of the best value-added specialty coffee. You know, shout out to Sarah and her husband. So it's we have to go towards that. That's first and foremost. Once we do that, then exporting those goods is another thing. So yes, so my focus is in producing those value-added goods, first of all, through quality, you know, and fair pricing, competitive pricing as well. You know, you can't just create quality stuff and be so expensive enough not to be able to be, you know, affordable. You have to be able, one of our biggest difficulty as African entrepreneurs and African producers is to be able to match the prices of, you know, foreign goods that are basically at very low prices. It requires a lot to go into production right now. So we have challenges, but the opportunities, I mean, it is challenging and even sometimes I would say difficult, but it is not impossible, you know, and this is the path we have to go. I do truly believe this is the path we have to go.
Could you tell us what one of your challenges are?
Sure. Again, when we talk about AFCTA, I mean, we have to remember, even though it's a continental agreement, the implementation is not done continentally. I mean, it has to happen at the national and regional level. So it has to contextualize to the domestic realities. So it's only, you know, Ethiopia is one of the signatories, for example, primary signatory. However, how far have we gone in regards to implementing the AFCTA on our ground to kind of synergize it within our own policies from the Ministry of, you know, Trade, Customs? Because when to implement the AFCTA correctly, we have to look at what is stopping us from trading together. So we said, you know, we were saying that there were tariff and non-tariff barriers. Exactly. When we say tariffs, you know, it's about like costs of, you know, customs and stuff, and then non-tariff barriers, you know, like cost of cargo and all these things. And you have to understand transportation and cargo for the intra-Africa, first of all, even to fly. For me, to fly within West Africa, sometimes I have to come back. I mean, thank God Ethiopian Airlines is takes the lion's share of, in terms of air transportation, which I'm very proud of. But at the end of the day, why do I have to come back to East Africa to go to a country in West Africa. I mean, most of the time you have to do that. And then the cost of it is great. So when you translate that into cargo costs, especially air cargo, even shipment, from west to east, it's a lot of money. The next biggest thing is, of course, taxes. I like taxes. Everybody likes taxes. But when it comes exuberant, I mean, in the case of Ethiopia right now, my chocolate is approximately taxed about 100 to 160 sometimes percent when it is 100% African-made product by an African coming into an African country. So, I mean, these are some of the difficulties. And then some countries have gone further into implementing and popularizing AFCTA within their country. I would like to really commend here my country, Ghana, for taking the initiative, not only because the headquarters is there, but they have gone further into popularizing within the community of what AFCTA is, and to make sure that the private sector knows what their rights and responsibilities are. Because at the end of the day, who is the implementing body? Yes, government is supposed to be there to create, the policies, the conducive environment to make this happen. But it's the private sector at the end of the day that implements this, that can say, hey, these policies are working and these policies are not working. So if the private sector does not know anything about it, if the country is not taking steps to make sure that this continental agreement can come in at the national level and work within our national structures, then it's going to be difficult. I mean, I can go to Bole Airport Customs and be like, hey, I'm an African good, and under AFCTA, which was launched in 2021. So I'm not supposed to be paying taxes. They're going to be like, huh? What is AFCTA? Exactly. So some countries have done better. I'm not saying that Ethiopia has not, but
if you are not able to bring the goods in, like you just talked about,
and even if you are, it's not that you can't. You can't. Nobody can. So as long as you're a legal entity.
You have to pay tax.
Yes,
that was the
you have to pay taxes, but it cannot. What we're saying is
it's exuberant.
It's exuberant to the point where it makes the product unaffordable for the clientele in the local market that you have. So there are others, and then of course non-tariff barriers, as in different institutions. I mean, one of the hardest thing that we've had here was registering our product under the FDA. I mean, the FDA, my dearest institution. Again, call out and shout out to our FDA, our Food and Drug Administration. But the red tape is exhaustive. It's just too exhausting enough if it takes you, more than 6 months. So, I mean, these are things that our current administration has to be able to see to facilitate the work of the private sector. And, the growth of the private sector, what does developed countries, what did they do correct? If we can state one thing they have done correct, is to support their small and medium-sized enterprises. That is at the core of every development. It's not when a state takes over or anything else. It's when you have a bustling, booming private sector that you can say the country is grown. The Toyotas or the Nestle's of today were but a small, corporation enterprise that were supported by their nation's infrastructure to be where they are today. So I think those are kind of some of the perspectives that are lacking. I'm not saying that there are no work that are being done. There's a lot of work. I'm also involved right now in trying to set up a private sector initiative. I don't know, I mean, we're talking about the Africa Day, but just to let you know, our embassy, our Ethiopian embassy in Ghana is one of the first, the first embassy, African embassy in the world. As Ethiopia was an independent nation already, and Ghana being the first independent state, the Ethiopian embassy in Ghana is one of the most historical embassies. So yeah, we've encountered a few challenges here and there in the past few years, but it's not something that we can't overcome. We will overcome. And so we're trying to initiate a private sector initiative to which, if these two African First Nations, as Ethiopia and Ghana, cannot move till this date, we still don't have no bilateral agreement between Ethiopia and Ghana. These two First Nations that played such instrumental role in establishing our African Union still don't have bilateral trade deals, bilateral agreements at all. So we hope that these would be some of the points that both administrations would be looking at to become the examples for the other African countries that are there. So we're hoping that a private sector initiative working with our respective chambers of commerces and others can be an inspiration to foster such friendship and camaraderie between our two nations.
So is AFCFTA enhancing the playing field for local producers?
Yes, I mean, the AFCTA does provide that platform to kind of balance the playing field. It does. That is what it's supposed to do. However, just like the challenges of many nations with welcoming globalization, I mean, globalization is a kind of like a two-sided knife, I would call it. There's a good and bad. Yes, you know, it creates kind of like a global market, but at the same time, you know, it opens us up to a lot of things. I mean, where are we currently when we look at Ethiopia in regards to some of the privatization of some of our, you know, industries and sectors? We can't live in a bubble forever, that's for sure. But when we do enter into this big elephant called globalization, how do we do it while still protecting ourselves? I think this is the million-dollar question. And I don't think, I mean, we can learn from some of the previous practices of best practices as well as some of the challenges of other nations that have gone into that. But I think it's a unique situation for every country. I think we have to be able, our leaders, I think have a lot of work in regards to understanding how to do this best. And I think there'll be trials and errors. We might fail on some things, but then, you know, we can't stop just because we might fail. No, we just can't stop. It's forward always, never backwards. That's my stand.
So this is going to be our last question.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you think are the roles that art and tourism can play in bringing about the Pan-African Renaissance?
So you saved the best question for last.
Of course.
Well, art, tourism. A simple question for me is, if I don't know about you, if I don't know about your culture, if I don't know anything about your country, how am I going to do business with you?
Right.
And I think art is a universal language that, you know, cuts across, you know, all other languages and everything else. So it's a glue. It is something that holds us together. It is something that gives us empathy and the power to understand each other. So if Africa is supposed to integrate and unite and trade together, I have to be able, as an Ethiopian, I mean, why am I doing business in Ghana? It's because I was able to go visit Ghana, to see Ghana, to enjoy the arts and culture of Ghana, to then enjoy the people, to then say, I like this place, I want to work here, I want to trade. So for me, art and culture are the glue of humanity, and they help us connect with each other. So unless we're capable of promoting Africa's and all of these nations' culture and art, then all of these visions and goals that we have, I don't think we'll be capable or have the tools to be able to accomplish them in the future. So that's the role that art and culture plays for me and in my mind.
So before we say our goodbyes, you have laid out some chocolate on the table.
Yes.
So if you could tell us a little bit about the chocolate.
Sure. So this is 100% bean to bar chocolate made in Ghana. And this is our extra dark one, which is 72% cocoa. We are fair traded, so this is actually for many Ethiopians that complain that during Lent season they cannot have chocolate. Well, we have a solution for you.
Exactly.
So this is vegan, basically. We have two vegan ones, our 72% and our 56% dark and extra dark. We're working on actually producing even 100% full dark chocolate. Many are like, but it doesn't taste good. Yes, extra dark chocolate is made out of 100% cocoa.
It's supposed to be very healthy.
Very,
That's the whole
very
thing.
healthy,
Yeah,
very
yeah,
healthy. But we're used to the chocolate that has milk and sugar and emulsifiers. That's why.
I think we should also mention how good cocoa is health-wise.
Of course.
Okay.
So cocoa is one of the healthiest bean. It actually very much resembles coffee, actually, the bean. I mean, it's a little bigger, but we have some coffee beans that are actually that big. It's supposed to be very good for health, for the heart mostly. Even coffee, I mean, they have relations. And even the roasting process is very much similar, actually. So that's what I'm learning now that I'm in the production aspect of things. It's good for the heart. It's good also for, I mean, they do say there is, what is that word? It enhances, what do you call it? When it enhances, aphrodisiac. There you go. That was, it is actually an aphrodisiac as well. It works with your hormones. To do that, so it makes you happy as well, and it actually tastes good as well. And ours is with no chemical. We are fair traded by Fair Trade America. So, you know, we work together with our collectives. We work with cooperatives in procuring the best beans, and we also work with one of the best, you know, factories to produce our basically chocolate.
So when you say, sorry, I'm backtracking.
Sure.
When you say it has no chemicals.
Yes.
The others do have chemicals?
Of course, like sneakers.
What kind of chemicals?
Emulsifiers, mostly, you know, like things to make it and taste good and to make it last longer. So ours, as being an organic product, of course, its shelf life is lesser because, you know, as organic products go. So, and then you might also see some change in the color, especially in the extra darker ones, because it's an organic and they're open to the, you know, direct environment that, you know, impacts them. But people have told us, I only eat extra dark. I don't do a lot of sugar personally, so I'm a 100% extra dark one, actually, yes. So we also have different flavors other than, so this is our milk product. This would be what many people would be, you know, familiar with in terms of taste, you know, with sugar and the milk. So we have a 38%. We also have different flavors. These are some of the few flavors, but we have more. We have mango as well, but I brought you the ginger flavor, and of course my favorite, the coffee.
I was going to ask you about
coffee did
go in
it. Yes, so I combined the two of my favorite ones.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you.
Quite.
And I want to say, have a lovely Africa Day.
Thank you, you as well, and everyone, and hopefully your audiences as well. Happy Africa Day. Looking forward to many, many accomplishments.
Absolutely.
And yeah, to making our ancestors proud. Let's say that.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. Till next time. Greetings.